Please, hey. So the Rebbe discussed the level of Bada that we're mamshich into this world, into all the ways from the level of Atik into the level of Koi, which is Malchus, which dresses up in Biyah, and we have the level of Bada to come down in Biyah. The Rebbe and I say now seems like trying to figure out here the Hemshech V'Inyonim. It seems like he wants to bring in a point that this is actually what a yid has to daven for. A yid has to daven to bring down the level of badad into the world. The Rebbe brings down the Torahs of the Rava Magid that the Eibishter Kaviyachol is lacking, is a level of Dalit that the Eibishter is lacking. He's lacking because the Eibishter wants to give, come down into the world. He wants to be Mashpia. And a Yid, as the Rebbe will bring, has to daven for the fact that the Eibishter should be mashpia. What the Eibishter is lacking, the fact that he wants to be mashpia, and we're davening for the Eibishter that he should be mashpia into the world. And the Rebbe brings this down. It seems like a side point over here. I'm having a little trouble understanding how this fits in the whole Hamshach. But this is just the Ois Hay, which the Rebbe brings down over here. So let's look inside. V'hinei Yodua Toiras Harav Hamagid. It's known the teaching of the Magid, Rav Magid. Shebodod based dalasin. We're talking about the level of bodod, which is the level of Yochid alone, as the Rebbe says, higher vein sheni loy v'gam beinen loy, level of Atik. But the word bodod Yochid is spelled with two dalasin. So, which is what are the two dalasin? The two dalasin is dalad de mashpia. One dalad is of the mashpia, but dalad de mekabel. The hamshocha, the mashpia, basically goes on the Eibishter, which is mashpia into the world, into the Eicha, as we said before. So we have that dalad, and we have the dalad of the Makabel, the recipients from that hashpah. And these are the two Daleds. But the word Daled represents the level of Dallas, the level of lacking, poor. If we're talking about the Dalit of the Mashpia, the one that's giving, how could that be poor? He's the one that is giving. And the Maggid explains, similar to the idea that even though the cow nurses the baby, the calf, so it's the baby that wants to nurse and have the mother's milk, but the mother has also the desire that to nurse the baby. So there is a desire from the mashpia to give from itself, and that is considered a level that it's poor because it needs to give for itself in order to be fulfilled, in order to be the mashpia, it needs to give. So the Maggid says that bodod is dalad the mashpia, dalad the makabel. V'lechayre hare dalet hu inyan daloisi dalos. The word dalet is the concept of lacking, being poor. Dal. Daloisi v'li Yehoshia. Daloisi means I've become poor. So when you're poor, that's the idea of Dalit. So ve'eich shayich Dalit the mashpia. So how does it fit to say the level of dalit, of level of poor of a mashpia. Umevuer shom. It's explained over there, the Magid explains over there, Shehu Kemaimer Razal, that this is like our sages of blessed memory said, Yoiser Misheha Egel Reitze Linek Hapora Reitze Lohonik. More than the calf wants to nurse from the mother, the cow Reitze Lohonik wants to give, to be nursing. So the mashpia has a yearning to be mashpia, to give to the egel behind. Sheyesh koisef utshuko behamashpia lahamashpia lamakabel. That is, that there is a yearning, as a desire in the mashpia to give to the makabel. V'zehu dalus dahamashpia. So this is the level of poor, of lacking, of the mashpia. He's missing. It's not the fact that he has everything, because even though he has, but he's missing the fact that he wants to give. That's why also the mashpia is also dal, is also dallas. That's the two dallas. And the Rebbe just says, "V'ula yesh lekasher zei mashen isboyer be'inyan lemaisya decha tichsef." Perhaps this can also be connected to the idea that it's been explained that Hashem yearns for your actions. So basically, he yearns, he's missing, he needs the action, he wants the yid to do. And if he doesn't, Hashem is yearning for that. That means Hashem is missing. That's something which the chisaron of Hashem. In any event, this is an idea of above, that the Eibishter wants to be mashpia. So now we're saying that there's a rotzen to be mashpia, and that's lacking because it needs something which it doesn't have. It wants to be mashpia. That's the dalit. So the Rebbe says that the person so just like the Eibishter has a desire to be mashpia, so, and because without the hashpah he's lacking, we also should daven so that the Eibishter shouldn't be lacking, so that he can be mashpia. Vine, k'moy sherotzin hadalet dehamashpia. Just like the rotzin and the lacking of the mashpia, what is he missing? What's his dalus? Hushi is malach yisorim dam mekabel. That's what he wants. He wants it to be without filling the rotzin of the mekabel is dal. So what does he want? He wants to fill what the recipient is lacking. Kain rotzin dalus hamakabel. So also the dalad, the rotzin, and the dalad, he's lacking, and he wants to, because what he wants that he doesn't have yet, that is lacking. What should be the lacking of the recipient? So it needs to be that the desire of the mekabel, which is what he's missing, and that's why he wants it. He wants something that he's lacking, is that the lacking of mashpia should be filled, so that the Eibishter should give, that should be his ratzon. Okay, Yedua, this is known, the Pirush Rabba Magid b'Mishnah, but the Rabba Magid explains the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Ein emdim lehispalel elu metoch koved reish. That before we start davening, as the Mishnah Brachas, it says that you have to have seriousness, your head, you have to reflect. You can't just start davening like that. That's the Pashut touch. The Magid touches metoch koved reish, meaning you have to daven for the heaviness of the head. That means the Eibishter. The Rosh is the Eibishter. And Kovid Rosh means the heaviness of the head. We have to daven for the Eibishter. That the davening needs to be for the heaviness of the head of above. What is Hashem's heaviness? So over there, Sheshchina Emeres, that when a Yid, God forbid, does an Aveda and does things wrong, the Eibishter said, the divine says, Kalani mereshi, kalani mizreni, I'm light or I'm pained in my head and I'm pained in my hand. It basically causes a pain, so to speak, by Hashem. And we have to daven for the difficulty that Hashem has because of what we do and because of things that are going on. So we're davening mit kovid roish, the Eibishter. We're davening for the Eibishter. V'chein mashma pirush Baal Shem Tov. This is also uh, appears to be the interpretation of the Baal Shem Tov. Al haposik, he touches the verse as Zois oshiv el libi al kenachim. This I will return to my heart, and that's why I pray. So what does Zois mean? Zois HaShechina, that's what the Baal Shem Tov says, the Shechina. So basically, it turns out what it means that because the person puts to his heart the Zois, the Shechina, Zois HaShiva Libi, Al Kein Eichel, that's why he starts to daven and beseech Hashem. So similar to what the Maggid says, that you're davening metoich kovid rosh. And that's what the Rebbe says, the two Dalison, that just like the Eibishter's lacking and rotzen is to fulfill the needs of the Mekabel, that's why he's not in the lacking, or Lemaisiyah Hashem needs to be mashpia. So the same thing is, a person needs to daven for the Eibishter, that the Eibishter fulfills his lacking, that he should be able to be mashpia. So this is it's almost a standalone piece. I'm having a hard time fitting this into the whole Hamshech of the Maimer. But this is a piece by itself. I'm going to need the people studying it and learning it to figure out exactly how this fits in. We're talking and discussing about the level of Bodod, and Rebbe brings in the Teres Rav Magid, the two Dalits over here, and the Mashpia and the Mekabel. Okay, this is almost like a standalone idea. Now the Rebbe goes back in Ois Vav to explain the Pshat from Eicha Yeshva Bodod. But really, the Rebbe asked before, here the Tzemach Tzedek explains how high the level of Bodod and to bring down the level of Bodod into the world. And how do we fit it in with the Pashto Pshat that we're talking about destruction of the Beis Hamikdash? And now the Rebbe is going to explain that Takeh, it is the destruction and the difficulty and the fact that this is all coming down. This is actually also, the Rebbe asked before, what is this surprise? This is all an Eicha to contrast, to come the Yeshva Bodod, the Ira Basiyam, which is such a low level that it comes down to. And now how does he get from that level to the level of Bodod to the highest of levels? How do we reconcile that? These two interpretation. That's the question itself of Eicha. How does this happen? And the answer is, uh, that Tafke through the Avoida in this Man Hagolus, we can reach the highest of levels. Let's see. Zehu Eicha Yeshva Badod Ha'ira Basi Amgoim. This is also now We understand once we explained how high the level of Buddha that we bring down, we can also understand what the question is, what the surprise is. Eicha yashva Buddha ha'ir abosiyam. How is it settled with the Buddha, the ir abosiyam? And Eicha bitmiya, Eicha is a surprise. And what is the surprise? So first we're going to see how the level of Buddha that we just explained, that Yashva settled, the Yashva is Buddha, how does it settle in Ha'ir Abasiyam? What's the Ir Abasiyam? The Rebbe explains now, the Yisrael Shahoyu Bedargas the Yidden were in a level of Rabotzi as explained in the note in Sharichot V'Emunah, represents Gecholim Oimim is separated. We've been distant from Hashem. We're not been so close. We've been like Gecholim Oimim is like coals that are at the brink of going out, which means there used to be a fire there, but it's right now. It's withering. It's going out. We're on the level of an am, which means we're separated. V'rabosi and a lot of what does it mean? Both literally and also figuratively. Kipshute means that the ribu is chalkus. There's a lot of divisions. Many the people's many differences, but also v'rabosi b'deis. It many different opinions. Ribuy hadeyas, lots of opinions. So there's rabosi literally a lot of people, and there's also a lot of opinions. What are the opinions? What are the opinions here? We're talking about das elyon b'das tacht. There's a lot of the upper level of das and the lower level of das, the level of Hashem's presence in a way of das elyon, which is bittul b'mitzias, yichudei law, and das tachni, yichud tato. There's the various different levels of the deis in the am, because in truth, as the Rebbe says, the Pasuk says that all these deis are really to be united. Over here, they're separated. The Ineksiv, the Pasuk states, Kikel deis havai. And Hashem includes deis loshon rabim. Deis means the different deis, all included. Yedua toiras admur hazokin. So it's known what the Alter Rebbe is teaching in the Likutei Torah, shetzorich liyes misagdim yachad, that you need to unite both of them. These both opinions should be united. The kel deis, instead of being plural, should be together. Ulamailam is that not only that they should work together to unite these two deis. Ulamailam is a higher level than just being together. Shemailam matan shavi, that the upper and the lower will be equal. It's not even going to be a difference. Kel deis havaya, we're saying that the Eibishter includes shekoil beis hadeis yachad. So the Eibishter havaya includes both deis, and over here, but we're saying Rabbosi there's a lot of opinion, a lot of the deis. Hinehi Rabbosi b'deis. But over here, there's a lot of das. So Rabbosi kipshut Rabbosi b'deis. Das elyon v'dach tachton v'chamay fanim. So this is still describing the level of descent of the different people. Different people. Rabbosi kipshut and deis. And then further, Hoysa Kalmona, she was like a widow. That's on top of that, which means a widow means that the husband is not present. The Eberster, who's the husband of the Yidden, is not present. We don't see the Eberster over here. Hoysa, a lot of opinions, a lot of ischalkus, and there is no, the husband is not here. She's like a widow. Shabaila holach lemedina sayom, like a widow, because a widow means when the husband dies. But over here it says like the husband went to Medina Sayyam, that's his Kialmona. Inyan Bailo be Iskasia. That's the idea. The husband is hidden, he's covered. Further on, when we're talking about Rabosi Bagoyim, that this has been deteriorated, come down into the nations. Who inyan hayislapshus binyone ayinu. That's the idea where godliness dresses up into the 70 nations. This is all leading up to the question, how do we get to Badad? Eicha yeshva Badad, ha'ir Rabosiyam. How do we come from the Rabosiyam to dressed up, the Shekhinah is dressed up in the 70 nations. And then weiter, Sarosi Bamdinis. Sarosi, my being a sar, a minister, a ruler, is no longer, it's Bamdinis. It's in the countries. Gam koyach ha'isnasus va'toikefu, even the power of raising and strength, who Bamdinis, that's in the country Hoysolamas, we became for a tax, which means we're being taxed. We're not being elevated. We're not being raised. We're not strong. Hoysolamas, this is the situation. So while this seems to be negative, but the truth of the matter is, the Rebbe says, that these avodas, when we are Sorosi Bamedinis, and we are in the Rabosi Bagoyim, this is actually brings out an advantage by the avoda. Avol kol zehu li'iluyo. This is all for the elevation. Sorosi oisios Tishrei. Sorosi Bagoyim has the same letters as Tishrei. She'oz binyan hamalchus, because on Sorosi and the time of Tishrei, which is the building of Malchus, liyos Sorosi ba'medinos, that you should be in the level of actually Bamedinas, controlling the Medinas. The Rebbe brings it from Shimas and Eicha. Hoysel Lamas, and then we say that it was for a tax who are bittul the Kabbalah soil. That's the bittul of accepting the yoke. So while Sarosi means that the lack of his nasus and it was lamas, but still that is also the level of Tishrei, which brings about that when you are experiencing the Jewish people in exile, that Medina is being in the country, they're no longer a force, they're under the governments and they're taxed. But this brings out also the positive, that is the bittul of Kabbalah soil, that Oisul Amasu, a bittul the Kabbalah soil, we're being taxed and we're not being allowed to express, which is the subjugation of accepting the yoke. Shedavke bizman hahelam v'hester. So while the Pashta Taich in Sarosi Ba'Medina is Oisul Amas would mean that we don't have expression or independent hisnasis and toikif, but it's also represents the idea that this is the avoida of struggle of Kabbalah soil without being able to have the benefit of all the giluyim. We're still doing with Kabbalah soil. Shadavke bisman ha'elam v'hester, that specifically during the time when there is a block and obscurity, when we are at the level that we have his chalkus and we have opinions and we are our being sorry, being sar, being in charge is in the governments and we're not have that force. Hine oz davke who abitul the Kabbalah soil. Shoisol lamas. Then we stake at that specific point is stake the subjugation of accepting the yoke. That means hoisol lamas. We were taxed to the meaning we're devoted to Hashem. Asher einei mitzias la'atzmai v'hu rak lamas. He's not an entity by himself. It's just lamas. This is what is the churban. This is what Yirmiyahu was crying of Eicha Yosha. As it's known, Shahavoida, but that was the tag, but that is actually has the advantage of Lamas of the Kabbalah soil. As it's known, Shahavoida Bisman Hagolus, that the work, the service during the time, during the duration while we're in exile. Ubefrat, and within Golus itself, especially, Be'ikva said the Mashiach on the heels of Mashiach, which means towards the end of the Golus. It's not in the level of intellect and not the level of emotions. We're not serving the Eibishter with our intellect or our emotion. The Kabbalah say we're serving the Eibishter with the service of accepting the yoke. As we said earlier in the meaning when we explained Moshe was humble, we said that mainly was for the doir of the Ikus of the Mashiach. Moshe Rabbeinu was humble because of the Avodah of Mesiras Nefesh, which is displayed by the people in the hills of Mashiach in that generation. And Be'al Yidei said Davke, and Davke Take through this struggles of Zman Hagolus, and especially Iksed the Mashiach, Nase Yoshva Bodot. That brings about the Yoshva Bodot. Gilui Bechinas Bodot Shalamayla Mishtalshlus. That brings the level of Bodot which is higher than Ishtalshlus. As we say, the level of Yochid, as we said before, Shalamayla Game Eses Firis Agnuzis, which is even higher than the 10 spheres of Gnuzis. That's not Yochid. Yochid means only. There's no 10 spheres, even the Gnuzis spheres, but often the Yoshva. But you bring it down into a level that Yoshva, Badad, the Badad comes down. Okebir, Kvet Kedushas Admur HaMtsoi Bepirush, as the Mittler Rebbe explains the meaning of Antu Chod, when we say you are one, not in the count, it's not only not in the count of the Atzilus of the 10 spheres, but even Shulamaylo Game Ases Spheres Agnuzis, that's even higher than the 10 spheres that are hidden by Matzilam in the level of Keser. This is even higher than that. So this is, as I said before, the level of Atik. This is the level of Chad, the level of Badad, all alone, nothing counting over them. So here we have the level of Badad coming down, Davke through the Aveda Bisman Hagolus. So Ubazay Yuvon Tivuch Beza Perushim Beicha Yoshim Badad. So now we'll understand how to reconcile the two interpretation in Eicha Yoshim Badad, which is the Pirush HaPashu, the simple meaning, Upirush HaTzamach Tzedek, and the meaning of the Tzemach Tzedek Shekoi al ha'ilui v'hagilui de'b'chinas bodod. He says that it goes on the elevation and the revelation of the level of bodod. Ki hagilui de'b'chinas bodod shelamayla mehishtalshelus, because this revelation of the level of bodod, which is higher than ishtalshelus, higher than esesfiris, chad, level of bodod, yochid, hu alidei ha'avoida de kabbalas oil, shebizman ha'golas davke, hoysel lamas, which is the level of kabbalas oil of the time of golas davke canal. That's the way we can reach to the level of bodod. V'zeu eicha yoshav bodod geber. So this is the question: how could be the level of bodod the b'chinas eicha loshen tmiyo pliya? This is a surprise, wondering. Sheyovim Rabbosi Om, to come from Rabbosi Om. Oy memois, they're separative. V'Rabbosi, and is Chalkus Bazeh B'chulu. So how could you come Oy memois, and then in the Oy memois to be also Rabbosi Bazeh? In the Oy memois itself, a lot of it's Chalkus. How could you get from Rabbosi lebodot shalamayla mishtalshlus? How do you get Eicha Yeshva bodot? You get to bodot ubay from the Yeshva, and to have it settled in huyin yeshal pliya. That's the idea of a surprise. That's the question. Eicha Yeshva bodot through the. So first, the connection between the two pirushim is because you get to the Eicha Yeshva bodot through the Eicha Yosha Bada, through the Golus, through the struggles of the Golus. That's why we get Eicha Yosha Bada. But then the question of Eicha, how do we get that high level, is because since we're in Golus and we're in a level of Aimamus, Ha'ir, Rabosium, and in the Aimamus there's Rabosium. So how do we get to the level of Bada? That's why it says Eicha. That's why Sprite. We get it, but that's why Eicha, that's how, look how this happens. And another explanation, the Eicha, the surprise here, Shehagilui v'hisyashvus, the b'chinas batot shalamayla mihishtalshlus, that this revelation and the settling of the level of badla, which is higher than ishtalshlus, harizeh shaloi al pi ishtalshlus, to bring down the higher than ishtalshlus is not according to the ishtalshlus, which means lamayla mitam vadas. This is beyond the reason to bring it down. So lochein gam ha'avodah shal yidei zeh yumshech hagilu de b'chinas bodot. So how is the avodah in which you bring down the level of bodot? This illogical, not explaining again the word eicha, but explaining why, how it's through the golus that we do bring it down, is because since we're talking about Amshacha, which is not logical because it's above Ishtalshlus, so also the Avodah through which we bring down the revelation of Badad, Hu Inyan HaTshuva, Hu Inyan Avodas HaTshuva, that's the service of Tshuva. She Inyan HaTshuva Hu Avodah Shalamayla Mishtalshlus B'Nefesh Adam. The idea of Tshuva, that's the service which is higher than Ishtalshlus by the person. So the person's tshuva, which is beyond his intellect, beyond his hishtalshelus, brings about the level of badad which is higher than hishtalshelus. First, through the level of kabbalas oil, in the parenthesis, the Rebbe adds the avodas of tshuva. To bring from higher than Ishtalshlus to Ishtalshlus, you need the avodah of higher Ishtalshlus by the person. So now, we said for Betach Bodod and Yaakov. So what's the connection specifically to Yaakov, the level of Bodod, the level of Yochet Yaakov? So the Rebbe explains, Oizai, Hine hashaychus the beginas boded, the beginas Yochid, the level of Yochid Yaakov, specifically to Yaakov. Davke k'meshe kosu betach boded en Yaakov l'gze betach boded Yaakov hu. Ki hine nizbaher li'il. Earlier it was explained sheboded hu beginas atik. That boded is the level of atik. Shelemayla mibeis hakavin yeminu smel, which is higher than the two lines, the right and the left. That's two kavin. Here you have boded alone, which means lay smaller bahayatika. There is no left over there. It's just one. That's the level of atik. That's the level of boded. Shalemayla mibeis hakavin yeminu usmolo. Ukemaimer. Like we say, v'lei smola b'hayatika. Over there, there is no left, so there's no two. There's just one. By the v'lochein gilui b'chinas zu. So how do we get this level? Hu al yidei ha'avoida b'kav hashlishi davke. That's through the service in the third line davke. Abraham is chesed, Yitzchak is gevura, and Yaakov is tiferes. How do we get to the line which is higher than right and left that comes through Tiferes, the Kav Shlishi, the third line? Okamashikosuv, and as the Pasuk says, Siyon b'mishpat tipoda, that Siyon is with justice, will be redeemed. So it says, Umefarish kvet kedushas admur hasamach tzedek. So the Samach Tzedek explained that when it says mishpat, mishpat udavke b'shloisha, you need three judges. The mishpat takes place specifically three. Basically, you need that third level, which reaches the level which is higher than right and left. That's the level of Yaakov. Mishpat udavke b'shloisha chulu. Dahainu chesed gevura tiferes. Chesed and gevura is not enough. You need the level of tiferes. Vahainu. So what it means is, how will we accomplish? Asiyas hadira lo yizborich uba'ofen shel shlemus, that the making a dwelling place for Hashem in a complete, in a full, wholesome way. Hu al yidei ha'avoda b'chol gimel hakavim dafke. You need all three. You can't just have chesed and gevura. You need also tiferes. Ukebir kvet avoda of Yaakov. Ukebir kvet kedushas merichoma admur. B'mishnah Tshlosh Dvarim ha'olam, as the Frierdiker Rebbe explains on the Mishnah, Tshlosh Dvarim ha'olam, the world stands on three items. Sha'idei ha'avoda begimel hakavim. It says al Torah al avoda gemilas chasodim. So through the avoda, the three kavim, Torah avoda gemilas chasodim, ha'olam, the world stands on these three. That's shenishlam hakavana de briyas olam. That is the completion of the intent of the creation of the world, is through all the three kavim. So the number three, the number of Yaakov, that's the requirement to fully fulfill the kavanah of briyas olam. This is also the third Beis HaMikdash, the number three, the Kav HaShlishi, because the third line is Bechinas Nachlo B'li Mitzorim de Yaakov. That's the inheritance which Hashem gave to Yaakov. There's no boundaries there, so it reaches all the ways to the top. Sheboy Tia Gam Ha'iskalelus the Bayis Rishon Bayis Sheni. Within the third Beis HaMikdash will be included the first and the second Beis HaMikdash as well, in the third Beis HaMikdash. B'zeh yiyah l'mayla, and that's going to be on a higher level, the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, gam mikemoi shehoya b'Gan Eden Mekedem. Even then the situation was in the beginning, in the Gan Eden, before the sin of Adam HaRishon. Hainu, what does it mean, Gan Eden Mekedem? Hainu gam mikemoi shehoya b'Gan Eden koydem machet. This will be higher even than was the Gan Eden before the sin. Okay, Yidua, as it's known, meaning Shlishi by Mashiach will be on a higher level than it was by Adam Harishon. Okay, you do opinion Adam Mashiach, as we know about Adam and Mashiach, when we compare the levels of Adam Mashiach, Adam hu Rosh Tevis, Adam David Mashiach. The word Adam, man, means Adam, David and Mashiach. V'hatzirif hu b'seder Adam. And the way we combine it first is Adam, David, Mashiach. Shemoir al seder v'chulu. That shows on the order, because it goes in an orderly way. First comes Adam Arishan, then David, then Mashiach. By Mashiach it says Me'oid, the other way around. Mashiach ksiv, hine yaskil abdi yorum v'nisav v'gava Me'oid. He will be smart and will be Me'oid very much, which is Me'oid, is also the same letters as Adam. But the order is Abu Metziruv Hamayda Abligvul. That's a combination that shows unlimited, because it's not in the Ishtalshalis. It's not Adam David Mashiach, but it's Mashiach Adam David. Hepech Inyan Hatzir de Adam, which is opposite of the form of Adam, which is Aleph Daled Mem, which would be the orderly Ishtalshalos from Adam David Mashiach. Over here, it's Mashiach Adam David. It is a combination which shows a non-finite or limited orderly way. So the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi is on a higher level. It's connected to Yaakov, to the third level, not to Chesed the Gevurah. That's the level of Leis Smolo B'Hayatika. Yes, V'hinei Ka'amur Le'il. As we said before, Hagilui de La'osid Mamshichim Al Yidei Ha'avoida Achshav Davke. The revelation of the future we draw down through the work now in the Golus. That's how we bring it down. Shemizeh move on. Sheyeshno Mailo Beha'avoida de Achshav Gam Al Agil La'osid. From this we understand there is an advantage in the service now, even over the revelation of the future. Since our Avodah brings down this great revelation, what brings down revelation must be stronger than the revelation itself. Like the Rebbe Marash explains, the Mishnah, it says, Yofe sho'achaz b'tshuva ma'asim tovim ba'olam hazeh mikol chayei olam haba. 1 hour in teshuvah and good deeds in this world is better than all of the life of the world to come. Why is that? Since the Tshuva Maisim Tovim explains that Rebbe Marash brings the Chaya El Mabah, it must be better. The Machar Shavoi the B'Tshuva Maisim Tovim B'Olam Hazeh. Since the work in Tshuva Maisim Tovim in this world, who Hagoyrim the Chaya El Mabah, that is the cause that brings about the Chaya El Mabah. Koilel Gam Hagilum Glossy, which includes all the revelations of the future are going to come. It's not just the life, but all the Giluyim. So we must say, therefore, that there is an advantage in the work and the service that we do in this world. On the revelation of the future. Because something that causes is stronger than the item that was made through it. So if Tshuva Maisim Tovim bring Chayil Mabo, it must be greater. That's why it's Yofe Sho'achas, because something that causes is stronger than what happens to it. Vegam, so that's why means there's a special advantage to the avodas managolus. Vegam be'inyan hatainog. And also when we talk about as the delight that has to do with Yaakov, shebechinas nachlo b'limitzorim de Yaakov, who bazman derayv minyan atainuk, that this inheritance of without any boundaries of Yaakov, which we said before, that's the third meal, the meal of Shalashudas Shlishis, which is derayvim. That's the Rotzim, which is the level of Tainuk. Yesh Maila Ba'avoida the Akshov Davke. So there is an advantage in the Avoida now, in the time of Raiva the Raivim. So we have this Tainuk that we experience in the Suda Shlishis, the Sudas of Yaakov, the Raiva the Raivim, is an advantage over the Tainuk of the Laos Love. As explains there beforehand, Tainug de La'osid, I guess the Rebbe Maharash explains beforehand, in Hamshel V'Kocha, that Tainug de La'osid hu b'chlolus nachas ruach de hanivra, that the light of the future is the nachas ruach, the pleasure of the nivra. Tainug de tshuva ma'asim tovim b'olam hazeh, and the light of tshuva ma'asim and this world, hu b'chlolus nachas ruach da'abeda, that's the light of the creator. Nachas ruach lefone shamarti v'naseh ritzoni, the Eibush says nachas ruach, that I've said and my will has been done. So that's a much higher level of nachas ruach, and that comes now in the time of the avodah that we do now, especially in the Raivin, in the time of the Gilu of B'chnes Yaakov Nachla B'limitzorim. And this is Shalidei Masenu V'Avadesenu the Achshav, through our work, our labor that we do now, Mamshichim, we bring down Shabbakotiv Mamash Yiboneh V'Yizgale B'Sabayis HaShlish, that very soon will be built and revealed the third Beis Hamikdash, which is Bechinas Boda Betach Boda Den Yaakov. This is the level of sitting secure alone. The Yaakov, the Jewish people, will be in the level of Boda. Shetiya Boy Dam Heis Kalalus. The Bayis Rishna Bayis Sheni. There will also be the inclusion of the first and the second Beis Hamikdash. Va'oz Havaye Boda Yan Chenu. And then it'll be just like the level of Bodot, it'll be Hashem Bodot Yanchenu. Kol echad v'echad b'nei Yisrael, for each one of the Yidden. Afal pi, even though it says Shem Bodot Yashim Se'ehu Beretz Midbar U'Besoilihu Yolel Yishim, and it brings from the Pasuk that notwithstanding still Havaya Bodot Yanchenu, as the Pasuk says there, while even though, or maybe through this, because they are in the Eretz Midbar B'Soyu, which is Gomer, which is Avodah B'Zman HaGolus, through this whole challenging time in the time of Golus, which is like a desert and in a chaos, in a tohu, and you come from the desert because of this Avodah and Golus, the Boded Yanchenu, to the level Hashem Boded Yanchenu. As in a way that is written before it, Kanesher Yoirkin, it is all from the Psukim and Hazinu, like an eagle wakes up his nest, it's done, he hovers not to frighten them, it does it gently, with berachamim, with compassion, with comfort, with passionate way. Shebekoriv mamish tove hagulula, so that very soon the redemption will come b'chesed u'barachamim, with kindness and with mercy, v'tia oz shlemus hakavona, and then will be the completeness, fulfilled, the intention, Hashem's desire to have a dir v'tachtonim. So it's tafke the avodah now, because the Rebbe talks about the mile of this avodah, because that brings the giluyim from le'asid lavi that must be even on a higher level. But the Rebbe talks about the level of bodod, while it's the level of atik, that's associated with the third level, Shlishi, because that's Nachla Mitzorim that goes all the ways up into the highest level, and that's why is Leis Smola Bahayatika. It's connected to this level of Shlishi because that third goes all the ways up to that highest level. Dort in this Abriach Menakotze Lakotze. So therefore, that is Nizgala through the level of Yaakov, who is the Shlishi, and the Raiva the Raivin, and uh, apparently that this Maimer also. I'm just thinking. The Rebbe said this Maimer was in Tishla Nidcha, but he was the afternoon on Shabbos, so this was already the time of Rabbi the Raivin. That's why it was Suda Shlishi, Suda Yaakov. That's the Rebbe, and this is an anticipation for the Geula before Tisha B'av, as the Rebbe explained it.